Also discussing psychedelics and Judaism with Natalie Lyla Ginsberg, the Global Impact Officer of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. She is in LA. And first of all, welcome to the show. And first, Natalie, talk about the fact that the use of drugs has long been considered taboo, even in Judaism, correct?
Well, according to the Torah, that's actually not accurate. From the beginning, Jewish people have engaged with all different plant medicines and psychoactive substances. You know, cannabinoids is mentioned in the Torah, and then we found cannabis at Tel Arad, but also something even like ketoret, right, which is a mix of a very specific different incenses that were blended together to create very special sacred incense. There's a lot of indication to believe that that was even psychoactive. So actually, really, I believe from the beginning of Jewish practice, when we were working with all different plants and incenses, we were always kind of connected. And even if we didn't have any plants, Judaism is so much about the mystical state, from Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, that is also a psychedelic state. Psychedelic doesn't have to mean that you take a drug. It's about being in an expanded state of mind and a spiritual space where you feel really connected to the divine. So I believe that was always a part of Judaism. But actually, throughout Jewish history, there have been many times where a lot of those practices have had to be forced underground. Just for one example, in like the Middle Ages or there was big witch hunts where they were murdering women. There were often Ashkenazi Jewish women who were practicing with different plants and different spiritual practices and accusing them of being witches. So that was just one example where these like mystical plant practices in Judaism had to be hidden or be erased because they were dangerous and we were being murdered for them.
Natalie, some scholars suggest that the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai was in fact a massive psychedelic event. What's your take on this?
That story in particular, I don't know. It could be, but that's not a story that I feel comfortable saying this is for sure a psychedelic experience. But what I will say is all over Sinai, there are psychoactive plants. I've been lucky to spend a lot of time in Sinai. I've climbed Mount Sinai multiple times and talked to local Bedouin healers and who know about all the different plants to really understand. And, acacia, chita, which is, mentioned constantly in the Torah, that has psychedelic components to that. There's a Syrian rue. So when you mix them together, they actually make a ayahuasca-like substance. And there's actually a number of other psychoactive plants in the Sinai region. So it's not unreasonable to think that maybe people were tripping out at some point in that story, but I don't think that we know for sure.
Also, in recent years, we hear about people going, for instance, to Central and South America to have ayahuasca experiences guided by shamans. But can you tell us about your personal experience and why it was so profound?
I have been lucky to participate in a few ceremonies like that. And for me, it's been deeply important. The first time I drank ayahuasca was not a ceremony like that. It was a ceremony grounded in a culture that works with ayahuasca for hundreds of years. And I actually found myself singing Hebrew prayers to myself in this ceremony. And then I ended up a few years later, lucky enough to join a ceremony where Hebrew was being sung. And that really hit me much more deeply and powerfully. So for me, it was this experience of being able to ground into my ancestors and to be connected to ritual that my ancestors have been practicing for thousands of years. And it really, really helped me set the container for the experiences that I've had. And I've had many psychedelic experiences where I have visions that feel very Jewish. Like I once was seeing like the tabernacle, or just different things. And I hear these stories from countless people. So that's really part of what inspired me to co-found the summit with Rabbi Zach Kamenetz and Madison Margolin, because so many Jewish people were telling me they had these Jewish experiences and they were looking for more support on that. What music to use, what rituals to use, how could they support their experience? as a Jew, rather than trying to work in another culture when they were having these experiences of the divine.
Explain how psychedelic plant-based medicine brings relief to intergenerational trauma amongst the Jewish people and also other people as well.
Another piece that comes up a lot for Jewish people in psychedelic experience is images and visions of intergenerational trauma. You know, whether it's from the Holocaust or from, you know, being kicked out of Iraq, for example. I just heard that story from someone. That's something very deep as Jews. We've, you know, survived, but had thousands of years of trauma and oppression. So psychedelics are a really powerful tool in allowing us to help heal that. And in doing that, actually really see things. Like, people have the most beautiful experiences. So that's something else that feels extra important as Jewish people, that we're really able to be engaged in understanding our trauma and exploring different ways of healing that. And of course, you know, people living in Israel certainly experience ongoing trauma every day. People who've served in the military experience trauma. We've had some really powerful people, you know, stories recounted from that experience. And, you know, Israel talks a lot about moral injury, which I appreciate. So there's not only the trauma of being under attack, but also the trauma of perpetrating violence against Palestinians in the military. So there's so many levels, unfortunately, of trauma.
Natalie Lyla Ginsberg, thank you so much for that very insightful conversation. Much appreciated.